Hi everyone, welcome to our next lesson. This is part 8 of our series JavaScript course, and in this lesson we'll be learning about loops in JavaScript. So what we're going to do is in our JavaScript folder right there, we're going to create 06/loops.js and our index.html. We're going to obviously link that JavaScript file. All right, so let's do that. All right, so there we'll look at the loop structure available in JavaScript. Programming loops are all to do with doing the same thing over and over again, which is the correct term for using it. We call it iteration in programming. Right? A loop usually has one or more of the following features. Let me show you. All right. It consists of one of the following features: a counter, a condition, and an iterator. Right? A counter which is initialized with a certain value. This is this one right here. What is a counter? Which initialized with a certain value. This is starting point of the loop. So basically, this is our starting point. The condition, which is usually a true or false test to determine whether the loop continues to run or it stops. Usually when the counter reaches a certain value. Now, the iterator, on the other hand, which generally increments the counter by a small amount in each successive loop until the condition is no longer true. All right, so this guy is watching the counter and the iterator is watching the condition, more or less. All right, so let's start with our standard loop that is the for loop. Okay, so the standard for small letters for loop. Okay. Fancy terms. For loop. All right. So the standard for loop. Now, the basic syntax basically looks like this. If you guys remember the if-else statement, the for loop basically is the for, all right, parentheses, it's got the initializer. Just gonna do it between like this, initializer, okay. Then with the semicolon and condition, do it like this. The condition, you guys just remember condition, and then it's got the final expression. Final expression. Okay, and then close it off with a semicolon. Now you open up and close it up with parentheses. Now I'm just going to close the side menu there so we can have some room to work. All right, and then obviously the code that you need to run goes here. Code goes here. We're going to do an example, but this is basically more or less how the syntax looks like. So we got obviously an error there because just for us, I just wanted to show you guys basically more or less how this looks like. Now the initializer, this part right here. This is usually a variable set to a number, which is incremented to count the number of times the loop has to run. Okay? Or has run. It is sometimes referred to as the counter variable. So basically, if you can see this, we have a counter. So basically, this is our counter variable. Obviously, the condition is the condition right there. Now, as mentioned before, this condition right here, this defines when the loop should stop looping. This is generally an expression featuring a comparison operator, a test to see the execute condition has been met. So basically, it wants to see how many times we still have to loop. Okay, the final expression right here. This is always evaluated to run, or evaluated or run each time the loop has gone through a full iteration. It usually serves to increment or decrement sometimes the counter variable to bring it closer to the point where the condition right there, or the condition basically like this, is no longer true. So basically this is our iterator, increment or decrement. So let's see how the syntax actually looked like. So for us, we're going to replace this. Let me just comment this out just to keep it right there. So, okay, so it's a reference. Right, you guys remember our tools that we had. So let's do like this. Sentence, let's do text. Okay, let's create our tools variable like we had before. Remember the previous ones? So we're just going to print out hammer, pliers, saw. Don't know, remember the particular order, but we're going to just name a couple of them. It's tools, drills. Okay, just put in a drill as well. Right, so basically this is our array that we had of tools, basically. Now the thing is, what we want to do now is we want to print out every single item in the array individually right down here. Okay, so in order to do that, we're going to use the for loop. All right, so we're going to do the for. Now, basically what we're doing is we're setting the let, just open the parentheses again. So let I, which stands just for the variable, equals to 0. Okay. So as long as I is less than tools, basically our tools variable right there, dot length. Okay. Then we want to increment I by 1. Okay. That's our increment operator. So basically what we want to do now is basically want to console log the tools with the expression I. Right? So as you can see, it loops through the array and print out each one according to the I variable. And you see this is our starting point. So if we do this as 1, you can see it doesn't start with a hammer, it starts with the pliers and print each one to the console individually. All right, very, very cool. So if we start at the 0, because remember the computer counts from 0, 1, 2, and 3. So basically what it is saying, let our I variable start at increment number 0. As long as I is less than this, tools.length, incremented by 1. Then basically we're doing the same thing in console of the tools individually from 0, 1, 2, 3. Basically what this is actually we're doing console log while 0, console log 1, console log 2, console log 3, console log 4. Basically we're doing the same thing over and over again, but instead of doing that, we're using the for loop to actually print out the code for us to the console right there. Very, very, very neat and handy. Right, so that is our for loop. If we got our initializer, this is it right here. Okay, so let me just repeat that. So we can actually just see what it is. So if you see the code, that it actually is kind of ingrained in your memory. Right, so basically the initializer right here, this is usually a variable set to a number. So this is our variable I, that you will normally see the I variable set to a number, which is incremented to count the number of times the loop has run, and is sometimes referred to as the counter variable. Remember the counter right there. All right, the I, this is the condition. All right, this is our condition. As mentioned before, this defines the loop should stop looping. So the loop should stop looping when I is less than the tools.length. So how do we check the tools.length? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So basically what it's saying is if I is less than 5, but instead of doing that, we're actually using JavaScript methods and inbuilt functions just to check basically how many items there is without actually having to count it out yourself. Okay. And the last one is the final expression. We increment or decrement the for loop. All right, let's move on. Right, so there might be sometimes certain circumstances, or sometimes you want to exit the loop before all iterations have been completed. We can use that, like the switch statement that we had before, we can use the break statement right there. So basically, what we're doing now, as you can see, only the hammer is getting printed out because we're breaking out of the loop right there. Okay, so basically, if you want to exit a loop before all iterations have been completed, we can use the break statement just to break out of the loop as well. A break statement will immediately exit the loop and make the browser move to any other code that follows it. So basically, if we put in here console CLG, next line of code, right? So basically what will happen now is, let me just refresh this, you will see the loop, instead of, if we just, let's remove the break statement, just refresh. As you can see, it loops through all the iterations right there. Okay, but if you use the break statement, basically it will exit the loop and basically go on to the next line of code. Okay, so all right, let's quickly build an example of when will we be able to use the break statement. Okay, so this is just kind of, but it doesn't give you like the full context of why you would use the break statement. Right, so let's quote it quickly. Right, so basically what I've done now is I've added the variable, initialize and declare the variable tools. Para is basically for the paragraph that we have right here. I just added some margin top styling right there. And we have our input, which in our index.html, we got an input bar right there of the search. And then we got a button right there as well of the search button. And we got a label search tools. Okay. Now the input, and we obviously query selected the button right there. All right, so that's all I've done. So if you guys want to copy this, so basically what we're doing now is we're creating a search bar where we can search for whatever tools we might have in our array. So basically searching for data in the database, so to call. But our database is basically a small array with hammer, pliers, saw, spade, and a drill. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add an event listener to our button. So btn.event listener, if you guys can remember from the previous one. So there's different event listeners. The previous one, we listened for the change event. We actually now listen for the click event. So basically, if we click on the button right there. Okay, just remove some of the styling, the search button, so just to kind of keep everything vanilla. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do, when we do our click, then we're going to run a function. Okay, so we're going to get to functions in the next episode, but just bear with us. All right, so let's continue. Let's do it like this, and we're just closing it off with a semicolon right there. All right, so just to kind of stop the error from happening there. All right, so now we're going to assign the let variable to the search one. Search, let me just close this off. And the search is basically going to be equal to the input dot value. So let's just do it like this. All right, input. I just don't want to confuse you guys. Dot value, because if you remember before, I don't need to do that again, to lowercase. Okay. So if I do, let me do it anyway. Let me do it anyway. So CLG input. Okay. So if we get there, it shows us that basically the input of our with the ID of search right there. So if you remember, if we go to our index, basically it shows us this one right here. So if I change this to, let's say, put a lot of H's at the back, you can see them right there. So it's pulling the right input value for us. Okay, so which is a very good thing. This is exactly what we're hoping for. But if we put in dot value, okay, so it returns an empty string because there's nothing. If we do this, search, press it, Let me just go down here and add the console log. And so if I do this, you will see it returns triple S. If I add the GGG, it returns the GGG. Why? Because the button had a click event on it, not a change event. Okay, so let's delete that console log. So you can see the input.value is basically coming from this input that we had right there, the value, and basically everything in it is put to lowercase. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do, sorry, I will explain things, but it's better for us this way because it's the way we learn. And if you have any questions, just pause the video, go back to it, and yes, just rewatch it. Okay, so let me just remove this. So basically we have nothing in our input value. Basically what we're doing now is we're setting the input value to an empty string. Okay, and the input we're doing is we're setting it to focus. Okay, so basically what we want to do is we want the input to be focused. Okay, so let's press this. All good. All right, so what we're going to do now. Now this comes the fun part, the for loop that we basically going to see how it works in such a scenario. Okay, so let's use the for loop. But this is not kind of how you would do things, but it just kind of to show let I equals to 0. Let me type it out quickly. As you remember before, is I is less than the tools dot length. Okay, increment I by plus plus. Okay, so we remember now how to do that. Okay, so basically the same thing we did here. Now we're just doing the same thing right here. So we're setting the counter variable, we're checking the condition, and we use the final expression, incrementing it by 1. Okay, so now inside here we're going to do an if statement. Okay, if tools, okay, of 0, basically the first one, to lowercase, is, you remember the triple equal sign, basically you want to check if it's equal to the search value. Okay, so if the first hammer, basically what we have right there, if the hammer to lowercase basically mean that one right there is equal to the search value. The reason why we put it to lowercase, because sometimes someone might type everything in caps. So we put it to lowercase. Why? Because when we work it at the background, we don't, because it's case sensitive. We want everything to be the same so that we don't miss anything. Okay, so we make it all lowercase. Okay. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to use the basically the paragraph dot text content. So basically our paragraph right there, I could have named it paragraph or whatever, but it's something that we can remember. Right, dot text content. Right, we're going to set it equal to the tools 0. We're going to add a plus sign and put a space. Okay, and we add another plus sign. Basically what we're doing is concatenating that tool plus another space concatenation, otherwise it will be put together. And just say is in our shed. Okay, so the hammer is in our shed. Basically that's what we want to say, or the pliers or whatever we're searching for. Okay, and then we use the break statement. Okay, so if that is true, then we can exit the loop if it's equal to the search. You understand? So basically if the first tools is equal to the search, basically what we're saying is if the hammer is equal to the search value, if we type in the hammer, so if we do this, if we type in hammer is equal to search, then we print this out. Okay, that's what we're basically saying. So there's no need to iterate over it because we can break out of the statement right there. else if, okay, it's else if, okay, so if I is triple equal to tools dot length minus 1. So basically what we're doing, remember the computer counts from 0, so basically the minus 1, it just removes the 0 aspect, more or less, from the statement. So basically what we're doing now is we're just going to say para dot text content equal to tool not found. All right. Now remember that the 0 that I put in here is just for the first one. So, but this is not going to work because we're just referring to the first one. I just wanted to use this as to say that if I just type in hammer, but actually what we have to do there is we have to include the I statement right there. Okay. So if we refresh, basically what we're doing is we're telling I that is equal to that, and I is as long as I is this, incremented by I plus plus. Okay. So let's refresh this. So let me go into this part, and I'm just going to make it a little bit less, in 2 RAM instead of 3. Okay. Make it a little bit smaller right there, and let's see if everything is working. So let's type in hammer. Okay. And type in search. The hammer is found in our shed. Okay, so we got a hammer. All right, let's type in saw. Search, saw is in our shed. Nice, so it's working. And if we type in spade, the spade is in our shed. Nice. But what if we type in something we don't have? Let's type in rake. Okay, search, tool not found. Okay, if we can do that in our shed. Okay, nice. You see, the thing is, what happens now is the break statement basically breaks out of the loop as soon as that tool that we search for is equal to the value of the tool. Then it basically just breaks out of the statement instead of keep looping over it over and over again. Very, very nice. Right, so that brings us to an end of this example that we have right there. You can play with it around, just maybe add some more things, and yeah, this is just for educational purposes, but there's better ways to do the search functionality actually. But this is more just an example just to show you guys how it actually works and things like that. Right, there's another statement. Instead of the continuous, the break statement that we have a continue statement. Now the continue statement works in a similar manner to the break statement, but instead of breaking out of the loop entirely, it skips to the next iteration of the loop. Okay, so basically if we have it like here, it just, instead of breaking out, it just continues. So basically all it does is we put in the continue. Okay, just like this. But instead of breaking out, it basically continues basically with the loop. But it's not what we're looking for in this case. We're just looking for the break statement because we don't want to return everything else in the database. We only want to return what we're searching for. Very, very cool. Okay, let me comment this part out again. So we don't need this exercise. So just remember, pause the video and just copy the code down so that it works for you. Okay, just comment this out as well. Save it. Let's move on to our, there is 4 loops for us. Now we're going to move into another part of the loop section. It's called the while loop. Okay, so let me just like this, the while, the small letters. All right, for this loop is not only the type of loop available in JavaScript, the for loop, there are actually many others. First, let us look at the while loop, so the syntax that we have. Now, basically, we have the initializer, like here. Initializer, okay, just do it like this. Then we have the while. Then we have the condition. You can see, because now things will become very familiar. And then we run some code. Then right here we have the final expression. Okay, so basically this is how the code works. So if you remember the for loop, we had everything. We have the initializer, because the condition and the final expression all in parentheses right there. But in this case, the initializer right there. Then we have the while condition right there, and then we have our final expression right there. Now this works very similar to the for loop, except that the initializer variable is set before the loop, and the final expression is included inside the loop after the code is run. Rather than these two items being included inside the parentheses, like I've just shown you, the condition is included inside the parentheses, which are preceded by the while keyword instead of the for keyword right there. The same three items are still present, okay? And they are still defined in the same order as they are in the for loop, okay? So let's make an example, okay? Example of the code. And let me just do this, comment this, example. If I can spell. Basically, we're doing the same thing. Let I equal to 0. Okay, so we're setting the initializer, okay? So then we say while, let's use our tools variable quickly. Let's just grab it up here. All the lovely tools. Grab it there. Okay, we put it right in there. We obviously close it off with a semicolon. So this is basically, let me just do it like close together. Okay, so then we say while I is less than tools dot length. Same thing, just a different syntax. Then we do some code here. Let's just do it like this. CLG tools. Let's just console it. Tools is just an example. So like that, and then we have a final expression of I plus plus. Fish. Okay, so basically in order to print it out the same, we do console.tools.I plus is in the shed. So if we just create a space like that, but we don't want to do that normally, we just kind of create its own space and then add it like this. Okay, so that will give us more or less the same thing. So that's the while loop. Okay, the next loop that we have is called the do while loop. All right, so this is the same as the do while loop, but a little bit different. It's very similar, but provides a variation on the while structure. So basically the syntax looks like this. Right, we have our initializer. Okay, so we have our initializer. Then we have the do statement. Okay, so basically then we have, let's do this. Let me copy that console.log. Okay, so we have this right there. Then we have our final expression. So we go to our I plus plus, and then we have our while expression. Okay, so basically what is this saying? Do this while this condition, while the I is less than tools dot length. Okay, so basically this is how it's going to look like. So do this while this condition is true. So if it's not true, finish the loop. Okay, the difference between the while loop and the do while loop is that the condition comes after everything in the do while loop. All right. So this brings us to an end of this video, guys. Thank you for listening and being here for almost 30 minutes. All right. Thank you for being so patient. But if I don't, let me just put it like this. I keep the lessons long because I want to give you all the information I can. There are more about this, more lessons and more things or resources or things that you can do in order to search for this kind of information. If you want to know more, Mozilla Foundation is a good place to start. And the next one is obviously the W3 schools. They're also a good resource to go and look for these kind of things. Thank you guys for watching. Give the video if you like it. Dislike it if you dislike it, please. And please, if you have any questions, leave it in the comment section. I'll try my best. I don't know everything. Let me put it out there. I don't know everything. I know more or less enough just to get me by. But I know, let me just put it like that. But please, I will try and help you. And Google knows everything. You just have to know how to look for it. And I really appreciate you guys. And I'll see you in the next one where we're going to be discussing functions in JavaScript. Because in your coding career, you're going to be dealing a lot with functions and methods. And kind of the things that you have to get used to doing in JavaScript or in coding in general. All right. Thank you guys. And bye-bye. And enough for me bumbling. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.